It's 2024, and we recently passed the 36th anniversary of the Mega Man franchise and the 5th anniversary of Mega Man 11 without much of the fanfare that fans were hoping for. Now, 2023 wasn't a nothing year, mind you. We got new releases in the form of Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection with online net battles to boot, and it was also the 3rd anniversary of Rockman X Dive. Last year did see the death of the Capcom handled versions of the mobile and PC title, but from the ashes came Mega Man X Dive Offline, an unprecedented release in the world of live service gacha titles that will preserve a good chunk of the single player content for years to come, with even more restorations being done by the modding community that is still booming despite Capcom adding the Enigma DRM to their library of PC games. Oh yeah, can't forget things like the Minecraft Mega Man X crossover, among other crossovers like Compass either. That did kind of happen out of nowhere. It's safe to say that players still had Mega Man content to enjoy last year, between the blast from the 2000s and the world of the Deep Log. However, that won't stop die-hard fans from wondering if Capcom will ever announce another original Mega Man title in the vein of Mega Man 12, Mega Man X9, and lots more. What happened to all of the sequels, or anything brand new for that matter? Does Capcom hate Mega Man? In this special episode of Mega News, we take a deep dive into the state of the Mega Man franchise in early 2024. How we got here, and what could be still ahead of us. Let's rock! Welcome back to Mega News, the show where I ramble off about the goings-on in the Mega Man fandom. First of all, to our viewers, thank you so much for waiting on what will be the debut episode of 2024. To reward your patience, I have a special show for you today, where, at the request of some of you I've talked to, I am finally going to compile my take on the state of the franchise as it stands today. We'll hit upon some relevant news topics on my bucket list as we go too. A quick disclaimer before we begin. I know, the number one question I'm going to be asked right off the bat is about the open letter to Capcom video, so allow me to clear the air. As of this current moment, I am not affiliated in any capacity with the video's creator. I also haven't watched anything from their channel in years, quite frankly, so I am not in a place where I can comment on it. I do apologize about that, but yeah, this isn't a response to anyone specific. I'm just going to address some sentiments that I've seen out there on the net and do my best to provide some context using what knowledge I've accumulated throughout my years in this fandom. Not to come to the defense of anyone per se, but just to be reasonable, because while it's really easy to let your emotions get the better of you in these trying times, I think it's also important for us to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Bear in mind that this is only in my opinion based on the best educated guesses that I can muster, and it's not to be taken as gospel. Alright then, let's set the stage. From about 2010 to 2018, the Mega Man franchise suffered an unprecedented hiatus that has been coined the Dark Ages. Series producer at the time, Keiji Inafune, left Capcom, games were cancelled, shots were taken, fans got their feelings and trust in Capcom destroyed, and aside from 2012's Rockman crossover that wasn't received well by the community, to say the least, to the point that Capcom of America was like, yeah, we're not even gonna bother with this one. Eventually we did get 2015's Mega Man Legacy Collection and 2017's Mega Man Legacy Collection 2, but outside of those, there were no substantial original titles released during this time, and we thought the Blue Bomber dead, doomed to a fate many dormant IPs suffer, becoming a merchandising mill thriving off of nostalgia. That was until that fateful December of 2017, when Capcom hosted a 30th anniversary livestream, not only announcing a Mega Man X Legacy Collection, but revealing to the world Mega Man 11. The first new entry in the classic series in 8 years, that took the 2D jumping and shooting action into the modern era with a new art style, quality of life improvements, a new double gear system mechanic, and an unprecedented amount of difficulty options for newcomers and veterans alike. People are going to have their opinions about certain aspects, but for me personally, Mega Man 11 was a very solid return to form, and it's definitely among my top 3 favorite classic series games. All I could really ask for was a longer Wily Castle. It was also at this time that we were introduced to director Koji Oda and the new series producer Kazuhiro Tsuchiya that would step into Inafune's old role. Right out of the gate, they had a vision to revitalize the Mega Man brand over the following 10 years or more, and their enthusiasm for a new era of the Blue Bomber was kind of infectious. They even said that they would not deny other Mega Man sub-series their chance to shine, so hooray! Deep down, people are not going to soon forget the dark age period the fandom suffered through, and I don't think we should ever forget. But for a while, the future was beginning to look bright again when the Mega Man X Legacy Collection sold well enough to please Capcom, and Mega Man 11 would go on to dethrone Mega Man 2's 1.51 million units sold as the best-selling title of all time. About 4 years after release, thanks to Capcom's new evergreen strategy to keep pushing Mega Man 11 and put it on sale over a long period. Mega Man 2 held that bestseller title for 34 long years before Mega Man 11 finally surpassed it, so it is quite the momentous moment. Maybe it was because of the evergreen strategy, the fact that 11 was coming after a long hiatus so people were fresh and excited, or both, but either way, it was clear that people wanted more Mega Man, and they showed up with their wallets. Soon after 11's release, it wasn't long until we heard Tsuchiya discussing the next Mega Man title in interviews. It had already been decided, and pre-production began in 2019, giving us something to look forward to, but sadly, nothing tangible has manifested yet. Instead, Mega Man Zero ZX Legacy Collection would drop in 2020 to a bit of fanfare, but it's difficult to gauge how well it actually did sales-wise since Capcom isn't always forthcoming about their titles in their financial reports unless they did amazingly well. And maybe that says it all right there. The consensus is that it did well enough, but definitely the least well performing of the Legacy collections, unfortunately. The same year, we got something totally different. A Mega Man X mobile gacha game in the form of Mega Man X Dive, or Rockman X Dive as it was known at the time. Pretty much right after that, the pandemic kind of happened, so it fell on Dive to hard carry the franchise in the consciousness of us fans for the years to come. Aside from the occasional mobile crossover here and there, but the vast majority of them were Japanese only. The updates to X Dive every other week certainly did spark new discussions and provided new content to digest on a consistent schedule, which shows the strength of having a live service game like this around. However, it was still a gacha game. The economy wasn't exactly great, the game suffered many bugs throughout its time, the story was a weird, fourth wall breaking English mess, and while we did get a lot of fan favorites, original characters, new takes on existing ones, and official art for characters that never got one before, so that was neat, we had finally come to the point that Mega Man was becoming a waifu simulator, and boy oh boy did it ignite controversy and basically split the fandom in half. I tell ya, some of those arguments weren't pretty. It's definitely safe to say that the new artwork, that was awesome, and the crazy amount of playable characters was the best part about the game. The rest, you can kinda take it or leave it. If anything, it gave us something to do while waiting for the next big game to happen, so in that way, it was fun while it lasted. However, like I said, the pandemic happened, so that fast forwards us to 2023 with Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection, which is currently the fastest selling title in the franchise, selling over 1 million units after only a couple weeks following the launch. For comparison, it took Mega Man 11 an entire year and 1 month to reach the same milestone. So this is extremely unprecedented for Mega Man. technically they are counting both volumes in the sales numbers, which is kind of cheating, but I can't argue with a Battle Network sweep, baby! Or should we say a Battle Network 4 sweep? Mega Man 11 is currently at 1.8 million units, and BNLC was last reported to be at 1.42 million units in September of 2023. So it's not hard to see BNLC even surpassing Mega Man 11 in due time, which throws a wrench in the predictions of what could come next. Does it really count though if BNLC isn't on the Capcom Platinum titles list because you know, the separate volumes? Well, I'll let you decide. And of course, Dive Offline is Dive Offline, I just covered that in the intro. So great! Mega Man is doing the best for himself than ever before, at least sales wise. Now what? Well, that brings us to today. Back in 2018, there was legitimate hope for the future, but it seems the further away we get from Mega Man 11's release date without any other sequel announcements, the more the faith dwindles and we slowly find ourselves back in the same place we were in before. It doesn't help that we just learned that series producer Kazuhiro Tsuchiya recently departed Capcom after he seemingly had to put his Mega Man duties on the back burner to help get Street Fighter 6 through the finish line. I don't think it's bad enough that I can officially say we are in the Dark Ages 2 Electric Boogaloo just yet. Objectively, the franchise is still alive and well for now, but the fear is we are heading that way, and the longer this relative radio silence goes on, the more we have to be subjected to takes like, J-Eazy has done more for Mega Man than Capcom has in 10 years, bruh! Like, I 100% understand where they are coming from, but man, I sincerely hope that is bait. Okay, that said, I do agree that Capcom has dropped the ball full stop when it comes to communicating about the franchise's future with the fans. On the other hand, they probably do have a very good reason for keeping the cards close to their chest until they have something tangible to show. We have the Sonic fandom as an example of what happens when you're a little too transparent with your fans. Like the Sonic Prime timeline placement debacle. And yes, it is a huge downer that the last 5 years has consisted mostly of collections and mobile stuff. In 2018, I popped off at a brand spanking new Mega Man game. In 2023, I was popping off at online battles for Battle Network, even though in practice, when I visit the lobbies, all I hear is crickets. Yeah, sorry Capcom, but it looks like Tango is still king. I don't know, maybe that says something about where we're at. It is true that Capcom has been taking some massive L's lately. The biggest controversy perhaps is adding the Enigma DRM retroactively to their Steam library, including games that hadn't received updates in years. It's been an ongoing process over the course of months, but that process suspiciously sped up by a lot recently after someone mistakenly enabled a Chun-Li nude mod in an official Street Fighter 6 tournament. Yikes! Not gonna lie, the discourse over the DLC costumes pricing probably didn't help matters either. But the first reason is just funnier. That's the last oopsie poopsie you want to make in front of the company itself. Essentially what the Enigma DRM does is it stops mods that rely on the exe file to function. However, there are workarounds that users have found for it, and Enigma does not break simple asset replacement mods surprisingly enough. Unfortunately, its inclusion has led to reports of slowdown, graphics breaking, and certain games outright not working, especially for Steam Deck users. The one thing Enigma has not done, however, is infect your device with viruses. That was a claim made up by a RageBait account that was using an entirely unrelated hentai game as an example. In the community's testing so far, no harmful viruses have been found in the Capcom games. Well, other than the fictional viruses in Mega Man Battle Network. Still, yeah, the whole thing is rather silly and harmful not only to the games but communities too. God, don't get me started on the reports of Capcom going after YouTubers for using mods. or the Mega Man X Dive NFT stuff. Okay, that last one is more on Capcom Taiwan, but still, it's all rather disappointing to hear. Point being, ain't nobody in their right mind is gonna be out here trying to defend old Capcom right now. Funnily enough, their Capcom Town website is holding a super election survey at the time of this video. One of the questions is surprisingly very self-aware to many of our complaints, such as needs to communicate with his fans better, too slow to release new number titles, too money oriented, or reboot old IPs already. Honestly, all of the above could work aside from maybe lame designs. I think Capcom designs are cool. Only issue is you can only choose one. Now, that is lame. But then comes this question. Is there a game that you would like to see completely remade with the latest technology, including character design and story direction? Ooh, an original Ace Attorney trilogy remake? Ooh, oh boy, I don't have any objections to that. Hold it. Do I see Mega Man 1, 2, and 3 remakes right there? Alright, on one hand, if any game deserves a Mega Man 11 style remake, it should be Mega Man World 5 on Game Boy. I would even take a remake compilation of all the Game Boy titles. Get all Mega Man Mania up on this. Releasing the first 3 entries again is not exactly what a lot of people in the fandom are looking to see right now, especially since Legacy Collection 1 already exists, among other ports. And if you want remakes, Mega Man The Wily Wars and Mega Man Powered Up for 1 exists as well. Though I wouldn't say no to a Powered Up 2 and 3. The PSP remakes are sick, in a good way. On the other hand, there is some merit to the idea of a modern remake. Making over the original trilogy in the vein of the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy treatment could be cool, and it may be one of the best ideas to get more people into the ecosystem and playing Mega Man, which is something the franchise needs desperately because the existing fans aren't going to live forever. This could also entice the older folks that mostly know the series for the original trilogy, aka just Mega Man 2 and 3. Speaking of, Mega Man 3 did suffer from a rushed development, leading to cut ideas and a somewhat unfinished product. So a proper remake would be a chance to give 3 a second chance at greatness and maybe implement some lost content. Regardless, this one question certainly got the Doom posting going, and to be fair, a lot of them were probably under the impression that Capcom was only asking about Mega Man, when in reality, this question features a ton of other franchises as potential candidates. That being the case, I don't think it's really worth getting angry over a survey that we don't know whether it will manifest as a tangible product or not. I am going to leave a link to the survey down below because it is important to do whatever we can to communicate our feelings to Capcom, as long as it doesn't turn into harassment of employees or something. I'm not saying they will follow through with our wishes per se, because at the end of the day, they are a company with a single goal of making money, so their top brass and shareholders get priority in the decision making no matter what. The key is to get those people at the top of the food chain thinking about the importance of the Blue Bomber, and you know, there might be a sign of the tide turning already. Last year in July, during the 44th General Shareholder Meeting, shareholders started asking about the future of the franchise and the potential for ports. Here is what was said. Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection was released in April and has surpassed 1 million units in sales, contributing to existing IP utilization and user expansion. What are your plans for the Mega Man series? Including Mega Man 11, the latest entry in the franchise, Mega Man is one of Capcom's historic IPs and is loved by fans. And as such, we want to take care in how we develop the series. We are considering how to approach the production of new entries in the series, which requires numerous factors, including the development of a solid concept, ideas, and gameplay, etc. Tell me your plans for new ports or collections in the Mega Man series. We are considering our approach to ports of past entries titles, which includes addressing technical issues. In other words, trust me bro, we're working on it. Which at the very least is the opposite of saying they're doing nothing, and that about sums up our current situation. At this time, I wish to directly address sentiments that I have seen shared in the community, Q&A style. So, Legs go, Lan. Why don't they just make yearly Mega Man sequels again? Resident Evil and Monster Hunter have no problem getting yearly titles out the door, so wouldn't that mean more money? Isn't the Blue Bomber their mascot? Alright, let's get this out of the way first. When Mega Man 2 came out in 1988, it did absolute gangbusters at the time with 1.51 million units sold. That is insane for the time period. Culturally, the game resonated with gamers in a big way that even Capcom hasn't forgotten, given that practically every crossover featuring classic Mega Man will have a leaf shield weapon or some other Mega Man 2 reference or music at a bare minimum. Not to mention the numerous ports and plug-and-play consoles out there with Mega Man 2 on them. Also, Mega Man 9 does exist. Now, there's nothing wrong with capitalizing on your cash cow in the nostalgic sense, but yeah, the bias is noticeably strong. That carries over to the casual gaming audience too. And that is why the meme exists about people gassing up 2, 3, and X1 like they're the greatest games ever, but then you find out they haven't played much else the franchise has to offer. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just observing here that those games brought up happen to be the entries that sold the most. I have my own stories that highlight how people outside the fandom view the franchise. One time I was at a Hobby Lobby picking up a frame for my 86th Mega Man 11 poster, which is awesome by the way, and the store cashier asked me what I'm framing. When they heard that it was for a Mega Man poster, they said, "Oh, I don't really like old retro games, but I do like the Xbox 360. Yeah, me too. That was a fun era." Another story I have is when my college classmates discovered that I have a Mega Man focused YouTube channel, and one of them immediately brought up how Mega Man 2 is really hard, even though Mega Man 2 is unique for having an easy mode in North America. So, even in a post-Mega Man 11 world, the franchise seems to still be viewed as old, retro, and incredibly difficult. Maybe the proposed remakes aren't such a bad idea after all. Anyway, I don't think anyone could argue the cultural impact of games like Mega Man 2, the first Mega Man X, and for the 2000s kids, Mega Man Battle Network. They are frequently referenced everywhere you look, even in games, anime, and manga. 2, 3, and X1 sold amazing for the time period, when the gaming hobby was more niche than it is today. So yeah, for that 80s, 90s era before the breakout successes of Resident Evil and Monster Hunter came into play, I would agree with saying that Mega Man was a flagship IP for Capcom. But today in the modern era, you dig a little deeper and it turns out Mega Man is actually kind of a niche franchise, isn't it? From the sales data out there, and even judging from the low budgets and short length of each entry, even the RPGs are shorter than your typical game in that genre. Mega Man gives me the vibes of an indie IP, at least as much as one owned by a AAA developer can be. The fact that Mega Man 11 debuted at a $30 price tag instead of a full $60 one tells me that Capcom probably feels the same. The low budgets and short length is the entire point of the Mega Man franchise though. The games are cheaper to produce, and especially in the pre-HD era, they didn't take long to make. So earning a profit isn't a hard task at all, as long as the sales remain strong enough to be sustainable. And that last sentence right there is where the problem presented itself right before the beginning of the Dark Ages. First of all, did you know that you can count the number of original, non-collection Mega Man titles that broke the 1 million units mark on just one hand? Seriously, let's list them right now. Mega Man 11, 1.8 million. Mega Man 2, 1.51 million. Mega Man Battle Network 4, 1.35 million. Mega Man X, 1.16 million. And finally, Mega Man 3 at 1.08 million. Then there are two collections on the Platinum list. Mega Man Legacy Collection 1 at 1.5 million. Wow, it's actually kind of close to dethroning Mega Man 2 as well, though you could say that's just more Mega Man 2 supremacy. And then Mega Man X Legacy Collection 1 at 1.1 million. More X1 sweeps. Now, Mega Man X Legacy Collection 1 is actually a recent addition to the list last year, proving the fact that all of these collections, along with Mega Man 11, have long legs on them years after release. But you do notice that they count the volumes separately, which is why B and LC isn't on here yet. Anyway, that's not a whole lot of games, right? And 3 of those original games came out in that late 80s, early 90s golden era. Meanwhile, Bound Network 4 was certainly riding on the peak of its series in the 2000s, with the hype around Bound Network 3 being so good, at least to most people. The ongoing anime, merchandise, and even Capcom's marketing was on point that year. And of course, we got the recent success of Mega Man 11. I believe that's all, folks. Now let's take a step back and look at the broader picture. According to Capcom's official game series sales webpage, Mega Man places number 4 amongst the IPs, behind Street Fighter, Monster Hunter, and Resident Evil. Not too shabby, right? Until you look at the sheer number of titles Mega Man has, 169, and only 7 of those made it to the Platinum list? Holy smokes, the ratio. Resident Evil serves as an interesting direct comparison here, as it has almost exactly the same number of titles, but more than triple the unit sales that Mega Man has. Well, I know which one of these is getting all the AAA budgets and marketing love. Speaking of being fair, that is something Capcom could seriously improve on, is market Mega Man more in general. But maybe because of the low budgets, that's not exactly the most feasible thing to do. So yeah, 41 million is a cool number, but it was a result of quantity over quality more than anything else, until the titles released within the last 5 years helped boost the overall count by quite a bit. This quantity over quality issue and pulling stunts like developing Mega Man 7 in only 3 months, yeah, you heard that right, didn't bother Capcom so much heading into the 2000s era. But it sure reared its ugly head by the end until it was too late. Their sales strategy at the time was to release at least 1 new entry in their IPs a year, and if the combined total of that IP's releases reached a certain threshold, that IP will continue to get games greenlighted for production in the following year. That is how we got into situations with anywhere from 4 to a whopping 8 different games dropping in a single year. It doesn't matter if any of the individual games don't sell well. As long as altogether they equal a profit, they would keep producing more. Granted, each title came from a different subseries and went back and forth between the 2D side-scrollers that everybody is familiar with and the RPGs. And I'll be honest, during the 2000s, the RPGs were carrying the 2D side-scrollers pretty dang hard. Zero and ZX may not have gone on as long as they did without Bound Network and Star Force. So there was a Mega Man for everyone as the commercial goes, and purely from a fan perspective, this era was the greatest time to be a fan ever, just because of the sheer number of new content coming out constantly. The problem wasn't the fans, it was the general audience and the media. There were so many dang games that people were struggling to keep up with it all, let alone buy them all. As for the media, during this time, you would be hard pressed to find a review that did not include a snide remark like, "Oh boy, another Mega Man game." Probably the greatest example being X-Play's Mega Man Bound Network 6 review on G4 TV, where they were practically begging for the franchise to die already.
We review lots of Mega Man games. Lots. Apparently, they decided to create an alternate Mega Man universe so they could crank out more games. But they made it, so we gotta review it. Here's Mega Man Battle Network 6.
But in the world of the GBA, a new acronym has emerged. MMBN 6. Wait, what? Another Mega Man game? Oh, for f***'s sake. Why don't you just shove a pencil up my urethra so I can get it over with? God, I hate these games. Oh, come on. This game is exactly like the other 5 Battle Network games. That's it. Forget this game. If Capcom is going to have a robot pump out these games, then a robot can finish my review.
Coma. That's what Mega Man needs. A nice, long Days of Our Lives style coma.
As you can see, the fans were happy, but the general gaming audience was getting real sick and tired of being bombarded. Mega Man was becoming Call of Duty at this point, the difference being the casual gaming audience actually likes Call of Duty. Like seriously, how did we get Battle Network 1 and 2 in the same year in Japan? It's funny that Mega Man 9 and 10 had a bigger gap between them than a lot of these other sequels that came out less than a year apart. And I definitely remember the former admin of the Mega Man Network talking about their struggles to cover the whammy of Mega Man X7, Mega Man 02, Battle Network 3, and Network Transmission all at once in 2003. Then Japan still got Battle Network 4 arriving just at the tail end of that. Golly! As a result of people not keeping up, sales decreased year over year to the point that the fans alone could not sustain the franchise any longer. The big wigs at Capcom never greenlighted Mega Man 3 because the sales of Legends 2 a decade ago were abysmal. That, along with the current decline, likely sealed its fate before it could ever be discussed. I will say they should have released a prototype demo as promised though. Keiji Inafune leaving when he did certainly did not help with this whole situation either, but honestly, I think the writing was already on the wall long before that. There was a Mega Man X9 in pre-production shortly after X8 came out, but that got canned. In recent years, we learned that Mega Man ZX3, or ZXC as they called it, and Mega Man Star Force 4 were both in pre-production, but were then shelved due to ZX Advent performing too poorly to warrant a sequel, forcing Inti Creates to take the gameplay systems they were working on and try to implement it into Mega Man 9. Meanwhile, they were seeing that the sales were declining with Star Force 3, which, by the way, wasn't even released in Europe. At the time, Capcom attempted to bring back the old Battle Network fan base that were decidedly not interested in Star Force by refining Star Force Mega Man's Buster design and making additions to the gameplay and story that harken back to the Battle Network series. The game did turn out amazing, one of the best on the DS. However, unfortunately it was too little too late. The final attempt to bring both fandoms together was Rockman EXE Operate Shooting Star, an enhanced port of Battle Network 1 to the DS with a time travel scenario featuring a playable Star Force Mega Man slapped in right before the endgame, along with a Star Coliseum minigame. Unfortunately for Capcom, the game was panned worldwide as being low effort, and it failed miserably in the Japanese market. As a result, Capcom didn't even bother bringing OSS over to the West, leaving fan translators with the task of localizing it themselves years later. By fan translators, I mean the Rockman EXE zone, which by the way, they recently announced that they are working on a English patch for Rockman EXE Phantom and Network that was recently preserved. We have a video about that. And according to Midori, who was the original owner of the phone that the game was on, but is now translating it for them, apparently the translation work is going along very well, so yeah, that's great news. Anyway, back to EXE OSS. Unfortunately, that would be the end of the two RPG series until last year's BNLC. The same year Star Force 3 dropped, Capcom and Inti Creates said, "Hey, remember Mega Man 2? Yep, they shocked the world by creating Mega Man 9, one of the last attempts at generating some goodwill with older fans with an 8-bit revival of the classic series, coming in about a decade after Mega Man 8. Boy, and you thought the gap between 10 and 11 was bad. Generally, this retro revolution idea worked out great for them. And yeah, you can tell that they are 100% playing to the Mega Man 2 nostalgia, from returning music tracks all the way down to taking away Mega Man's charge shot and slide, which was then given to Proto Man as an exclusive. But Mega Man 9 was still a great game, and it inspired a crazy number of retro-style indie games that I believe the effects are still felt today. Albeit, even I have to admit it was tough. Mega Man 9 certainly did well enough for itself, enough for them to go forward into 10 about a year and a half later. 10 still had the 8-bit style, but you could tell that it was trying to be more original than just another Mega Man 2. A lot of effort went into it as well, such as bringing back a ton of returning Mega Man composers for the music. Unfortunately, 10 didn't end up performing quite as well. The decline was already settling in by this point, and I guess you can only play the nostalgia card once before people get tired of that too. By the end of the 2000s, Capcom had milked the franchise for all it had too fast and too soon. Not only was the general audience losing interest, but even the fans noticed a drop in quality of certain games. Then, during the Legends 3 debacle, Inafune departed from the company, essentially putting the final nail in the coffin. I know that we all love to poop on the man for various reasons that he did after leaving Capcom, and apparently we can poop on him for what he did while he was still at Capcom, because yeah, Mega Man Universe was another game that was going to be cancelled. It was kind of like a Mario Maker before Mario Maker, but for Mega Man. But it turns out that game was going to collapse on itself no matter what, due to mismanagement, cheapening out on really novice developers, and of course Inafune's over-ambitious ideas. Rockman Corner has a great article about this that you should definitely check out. Another notable game that got cancelled during all that was Mega Man Online, the MMO that was being made in Korea. However, the cancellation of that one was more attributed to the studio behind it closing down, and not so much Capcom themselves. So they get a pass on that one. Regardless, when the man was still at Capcom, he was in a position of power to push for more Mega Man. The Mega Man 11 development team would later admit that without Inafune around, they were pretty dang lost as to what to do next, and just kinda let it go for years until Coach Yoda came knocking on Kazuhiro Tsuchiya's door like, "Hey, why aren't we making Mega Man no more?" Getting back to the question now, why don't they do yearly sequels anymore? 1. The oversaturation and lack of care prior to the Dark Ages is probably still fresh in their mind, and they are arguably being too overly cautious not to repeat their past mistakes. That is why they adopted their evergreen strategy, and why they don't mind letting one game accumulate additional sales over a long period of time. I think the new strategy is working out though, since Mega Man 11 and a couple of the collections have shown to have long legs past their respective release dates, something we haven't seen Mega Man games achieve up to this point. I can see them sticking with the strategy for the foreseeable future. 2. Game development is a vastly different world nowadays. No longer is it possible to pump out sequels in half a year, simply because HD and 4K development has significantly increased dev times and costs. We already saw this with Mega Man 11 and Mega Man X Dive that were in development for 2 years or more. And yeah, that sounds about right. 2 years is practically the bare minimum these days. As for the question of why it is always Resident Evil and Monster Hunter, I mentioned how 1 million was great for Mega Man 2, 3, and X1 back in their period, because the gaming hobby was still kind of niche back then compared to today. Now that gaming has become mainstream over the past couple decades, we are seeing bigger, higher budget titles like Resident Evil and Monster Hunter that sell multiple millions of copies with each release. And while a single million is still a great milestone worthy of a sequel, it's still going to pale in comparison to the big guys in the room. That said, it is bad to put all your eggs in one basket. Inafune himself taught us that lesson. Diversity is a good thing. However, when a major worldwide event like the COVID pandemic happens, forcing you to make decisions on what projects to prioritize your dwindling time and resources on, which ones would you choose to keep the company afloat? Are all of the legacy collections a sign of laziness and purely cashing in on nostalgia? Okay, I want new games too, but come on, that is just unfair to say. Ask yourself this, if these collections were truly low effort, would BNLC have online connectivity at all? Because I'll tell you now, they could have easily left it single player only and called it a day, much like the Wii U Virtual Console ports. What about X Challenge or Z Chaser? Would those still exist in a quick cash grab collection? How about the fact that the ZeroZX Legacy Collection is a source port with high quality cutscenes and voiceovers for the ZX games? And Bound Network is like a hybrid source port? And they address some issues that fans used to have about the games. Heck, they even got the Capcom sound team making brand new music tracks and lots of brand new remixes for the last 3 collections that came out. Sorry, but I don't buy the low effort collection narrative. But I will tell you what I think the purpose of them existing are. 1. Capcom loves to put out collections or similar re-releases to perform what we call the Capcom test. They have been known to use the sales data in reaction to these re-releases to gauge interest in a new entry, as was the case with Mega Man Legacy Collection 1's success, literally being the reason Mega Man 11 exists. Don't believe me? Here is what Tsuchiya had to say in an interview with VentureBeat at the time. What was really nice was, when we released Mega Man Legacy Collection, it did really well, Tsuchiya told me. It had 1 million sales worldwide. It was very much a way of numerically showcasing to people internally that there is a strong fan base. There are people waiting for a new Mega Man game. We were able to show that with those numbers. We wouldn't have been able to do that without our fans. I am very thankful to our fan base. I know that worrying about sales so much is a thing that should be more the concern of the companies and the shareholders, and honestly it probably should remain that way. But hearing this stuff right here really drives home the point that the sales kind of do matter. And the reason why we talk about it so dang much is that it's a tangible number signifying how much support the games are getting and how much our support is getting through to the companies. And of course, more support equals more games, so the higher the number, the better. It's elementary. Number 2, listen. For many, if not all these series, it had been a decade or more since we saw a new release for them. A lot can change in that time, including there being a whole new generation of kids and adults that don't know what Mega Man is thanks to its relative absence. That being the case, it's a prime opportunity to reintroduce the Blue Bomber to the world and catch everyone up on the past before they even think about sequels. After all, we know that you can pretty much play the side scrollers in any order you want, but for anyone who knows literally nothing about Mega Man, they'll look at that 11 in the title and be like, oh, that's a lot of games. Do I need to play the other ones first? Of course, this whole idea of catching everybody up hitches on Capcom doing something to capitalize on the renewed interest. But the collections and even the proposed remakes, while not something hardcore fans want right now, aren't inherently a bad idea from a business perspective. I have already seen firsthand how these releases have become a gateway for new people to get into the franchise, or try games that they haven't played before when they may not have otherwise. I mean, hey Capcom, if you want to use X-Dive to renew interest in Mega Man X Command Mission so much, actually releasing it on anything other than the PlayStation 2 and GameCube might help more people actually play it. I've seen parents introducing their kids to Mega Man for the first time thanks to 11 and the collections, and it's pretty wholesome. Maybe little by little then, we can combat the meme about people in this fandom stating their opinions as fact without having played the games they're talking about. Why doesn't Capcom hire Inti Creates to make games anymore? What happened between them? I'm adding this bonus question because it is something I get asked kinda often. The final game Capcom and Inti Creates ever worked on together was Mega Man 10 and the Mega Man Zero collection on Nintendo DS, while Keiji Inafune was still at Capcom. Then, of course, Inafune left and started his own company, Concept. Later, he introduced the infamous Mighty No. 9 Kickstarter, which Inti was brought on as the developer for. Inti and Inafune have been working together ever since, most recently bringing the man back to help with Azure Striker Gunvolt 3. Their relationship on display started the whole school of thoughts that, hey, Capcom hates Inafune, therefore they must hold a grudge against Inti Creates too for daring to work with him. I don't know if there is any way to prove or disprove that, but I'll be honest, I never got the vibe that there is bad blood between them, or at the very least, Hate is a strong word to describe it. I remember when Mega Man Legacy Collection 2 was being shown on the E3 show floor, and Inti Creates devs were spotted chatting it up with Capcom reps next to the demo station. And literally every time Inti's PR people get asked about Mega Man, heck, whenever I interviewed Inti Creates, their answer is always the same, that Mega Man belongs to Capcom, and if they ever approached them to work on a new game, they would seriously consider it. Well, probably more like say yes in a heartbeat, since all the Mega Man callbacks in their games scream, "Take us back, please!" Even the recent Untitled project that they teased with a screenshot a bit ago uses a similar grid battlefield to that of Battle Network, except on closer inspection, it looks more like a traditional turn-based card game than purely Battle Network. Anyway, at least we know that if there is bad blood, the aggressor isn't Inti Creates. So what the heck happened to their partnership anyway? Well, there is one theory. Recently, the Hidden Palace community shared a number of Xbox 360 prototypes, and among them was Mega Man 10. Upon closer inspection, it was discovered that Mega Man 10 at one time was going to include an assist co-op mode, where two players could play as Mega Man, Proto Man, or likely Bass on one screen. You know, that makes so much sense because Mega Man and Proto Man were working together throughout the entire storyline. Oh yeah, it's all clicking together now. This mode was set to support online functionality as well, where players could exchange ID cards that they could customize with different sprites. As for the gameplay, there are some obstacles seemingly unique to the mode, and at certain points players would have to sync up to unleash a supercharged Buster Shot. There was also a mechanic known as Pickup Standby, where the players could stop following objects and ceilings, answering the question, do they even lift bro? You could even pick up your partner and throw them around for some Super Mario multiplayer style chaos. That's funny. The community is still trying to figure out if we can get assist co-op working in the prototype, but while we wait, where am I going with this again? When Protodude of Rockman Corner initially broke the news, Midori from Mega Man Tune a Day, and I believe a former The Mega Man Network contributor from back in the day, had an interesting rumor to share. The fact this didn't get implemented is why Capcom stopped working with Inti Creates. Capcom stopped working with Inti. Zero Collection still came out on DS, but that was already in dev anyway. What I'd heard back in the day, Inti was interested in doing co-op. Capcom was like, cool, we'll help. Then Inti was like, no, we got this. And then, they didn't got it. I don't know the specifics, but Inti dropped the ball on it real hard, and it did not sit well with Capcom. And Protodude added that this does align a bit with Mega Man Universe's network features. They didn't even approach Inti for help. So to sum it up, Inti apparently dropped the ball on the online functionality for Mega Man 10, even though it was their idea and the feature had to be cut, leading Capcom to cease working with them because of their incompetence. Honestly, if this is true, it would explain a lot. I could tell that online was never Inti's strong suit, given that Mighty No. 9 ended up getting delayed multiple times. The last delay specifically because they were working from an outdated engine and couldn't get the online mode to work in time. And you know what? Release day came and the online mode was still unplayable because whoever was the client got an unbearable amount of input lag. Almost felt like a waste of time back then, like they should have just focused on the single player where it really mattered. Oh well, so what do you guys think? Plausible theory? For now, let's move on. Hey man, we showed up with our wallets, we supported all the releases, and the franchise is selling better than ever. What could possibly be taking them so long to make new games? Believe me, I hear you loud and clear. I too thought there would be something to show for all of the support by now, and that's the frustrating part. So here's my theory about what is going on. People will say that at this time, the COVID excuse no longer flies. But is that really the case? Even though society has returned to a somewhat normal state, the onus is still out there. Game devs are still working remotely, and the eternal release schedules are still feeling the effects of the pandemic even today. I do not believe that Kazuhiro Tsuchiya was lying when he talked about a 10-year plan for the Mega Man franchise. and told us that the next game had already been decided and entered pre-production in 2019. I truly believe that COVID hit Capcom and the Mega Man team in particular really hard in 2020, and here are my receipts. 2021 marked the 20th anniversary of the Mega Man Bound-at-Work series, and a lot of folks were clamoring for a Legacy Collection or some other acknowledgement from Capcom to celebrate. Well, there were a few things, but overall the anniversary turned out to be kind of a nothing burger. But we did get an acknowledgement from Capcom Unity's Ochi-san, where he had this to say. If the world hadn't been in this situation, if the world hadn't been in such a state, I might have had other plans to announce. But for now, I think it's time to be patient. Of course, washing hands, gargling, and social distancing are important too. It's always Rockman who beats the virus after all. In 2023, after the Legacy Collection finally came to fruition and was released, director Masakazu Iguchi confirmed that development had begun, quote, about 2 years ago, which would align perfectly with the timing of the 20th anniversary and Ochi-san's statement. This 2-year gap hasn't come up just with the BNLC, but with other recent Capcom titles as well. And we know this because of the unfortunate ransomware attack on Capcom in 2020, when a lot of data, including their entire pre-COVID internal release schedule, got leaked. Due to the sensitivity of where the data came from, I cannot show you anything from it, but I can talk about the highlights. Dragon's Dogma 2 is out next month, but it was originally slated to release 2 years ago in Q2 of 2022. The Apollo Justice Ace Attorney trilogy just came out last month, and hey, I reviewed it too, but it too got its announcement delayed by 2 years. Monster Hunter Wilds was supposed to be out Q3 2023, but it only just got announced at the Game Awards for a vague 2025 release. Other titles like Street Fighter 6 were delayed about a year, and the list goes on with a number of titles from the leak still unaccounted for. One of those being Rockman Tyson, or some prefer Mega Man Match. All that's known about it is it would be multiplayer focused, with post-launch DLC being planned. Possibly a 3D action title. Most interestingly, it had the largest budget of any Mega Man title, being comparable to the budget of Monster Hunter Stories 2. And it was predicted to sell 2 million copies over the course of 3 years, which would be a Mega Man first. Rockman Tyson was slated for a Q3 2022 release, but so far, no official announcements for it. I've heard things over the years like it's in dev hell, or one reason it's taking so long after Mega Man 11 to come out is because they switched from Mega Man 11's old MT framework engine over to the current RE engine, and thus they have to take time to build assets from scratch. But anyway, there was another interview with Kazuhiro Tsuchiya when he talked about another game idea that was conceived before Mega Man 11. However, he would not reveal any details because he fully intended to make this game someday. I do have to wonder if Tyson was going to be that pet project of his, but then COVID ruined the whole plan's timeline. The thing is, the Eternal Mega Man staff is incredibly small. During the 2000s, they would outsource to Inti Creates a lot, but nowadays, after Legacy Collection 1 was outsourced to Digital Eclipse, Capcom has chosen to do everything in-house from that point forward. So they only have Capcom Taiwan for X-Dive, another team in Japan helping with Dive, and then presumably one internal team for the collections, and another for the next mainline title. But this is just speculation based on my observations. Still, like I said, the teams are rather small, and especially when the pandemic hit, members had to be shuffled around to meet development deadlines. The biggest example was Tsuchiya being pulled to help with Street Fighter 6. And yeah, that would end up being his final release before departing the company. So what will become of Rockman Tyson now? Are they still working on it? Has it been cancelled? Well, if we keep going by the theme of 2-year delays, technically we still have until the end of 2024 as a likely time to see an announcement. If nothing happens by then, now we can pull out the torches and pitchforks. Just kidding. Unless... Final question. Is the franchise dead again without Kazuhiro Tsuchiya? That is a tough one to answer because it depends on the situation on the inside, which we got no knowledge of. It's been said prior when Keiji Inafune departed that the Mega Man devs that remained were left with no leadership or vision on how to proceed. I can only hope it's not that bad this time, and Tsuchiya was able to find a successor before he left. But who knows? Prime candidates for a successor could be Masakatsu Uguchi, or my favorite pick, Mega Man 11 director Koji Oda. Remember, it wasn't even Tsuchiya that proposed working on Mega Man again. It was Koji Oda knocking down the man's door trying to get answers that truly got things rolling. We need more guys like him that can take the initiative within the company if we want to see Mega Man continue on. Thankfully, Mega Man has had strong sales within the last 5 years under Tsuchiya's rule, so I do not think Capcom is not going to rest on their laurels this time. They know people want more, it's just a matter of priorities and time. And maybe that's why they're putting out so many dang surveys lately, because they're truly trying to figure out what to do next. Yeah, I don't know what the future holds at this point. A Star Force or a Legends Legacy collection? Rockman Tyson? Remakes? Mega Man X-Type 2? Are they going to look at that Battle Network sweep and make a new Battle Network game? Hard to say, but hopefully we won't have to wait much longer for them to show what they've been cooking. I am going to make a prediction and people are going to hate me for it, especially the X9 fanboys, but I think Mega Man 12 will come out before any other sequel. They already got 11 to build off from. Wily hints at a sequel at the end of 11, saying that he will always come back, plus it would give them a chance to address the criticisms people had about 11 and expand on the base of what they got, especially if they want to experiment with the RE engine. But hey, I would love to be wrong. They got quite a few cliffhangers to solve, so I only hope that they do get resolved one day. I'll end off with one last thought. Remember when I pointed out that Mega Man has 169 titles? Yeah, that's a lot, and you know, I sincerely doubt everybody here has played them all. Heck, there are still a few obscure titles here and there even I haven't touched yet. I understand everyone has their own ideal version of Mega Man. However, while we are still waiting for the next big thing, why not take an open-minded approach and try out those other series, spin-offs, or obscure titles released throughout the years? Don't forget that the fan game, modding, and preservation communities are always pumping out new content for us to enjoy, so that there is never a shortage, even when Capcom lets us down. There's certainly no shortage of inspired indie games out there to try too. Some of those even coming from former Mega Man developer Inti Creates. Give them all a try. Who knows, you might find a treasure among the pile, or discover that one game that everyone says sucks doesn't suck so much after all. Well everybody, I would like to thank you all for coming to my TED Talk, and hearing me out if you made it this far. I do want to stress again that this is all my own educated guesses. I don't want to be like, everything I say is absolute and you are dumb if you disagree. It's not like that at all. You're free to come to your own conclusions from here, and hey, if I got something wrong, let me know. After all, we're all still learning on this journey. As for me, after this, it's back to Mega News proper, which may be either a bi-weekly or monthly series for now, depending on the time I get to work on these. And I got a lot of catching up with live streaming content to do too. Ooh boy. In addition, I have a couple more early reviews lined up in the near future, so definitely stay tuned to ShadowRockZX for all things Mega Man and other things like I just mentioned. Until then, rock on and have yourselves a great time zone.